Stewart, it's always a big deal when a platform has an outage, but especially now when these are our lifelines. What are you doing to make sure this doesn't happen again?
Well, I mean, a lot of it is just looking at the causes of the incident and building more resilience. So this has been a pretty exciting 6-month period, I think, for us. And over the course of that period, we've had 100% uptime most months and 99.9% for the whole period. And unfortunately, Monday, let's say, demonstrated the value that customers place on Slack service.
Speaking of customers, you announced this morning the results of a global survey of 5,000 workers, and most remote workers are saying they're more satisfied than they were in offices. They want a hybrid model for the long term. You've told your employees they can work from home indefinitely, but there's a whole school of CEOs who are pushing back on this. Satya Nadella saying that remote work can feel like sleeping at work. How do you square that?
Well, none of us truly know what's going to happen, but one thing we can say for sure is that the market for talent is a real market, and if certain employers are giving the option, the flexibility, and that's something that's desirable to employees, then ultimately people aren't going to have any choice. And I don't think anyone wants to work, as we have been under the current conditions, where you can't go outside and there's no childcare and you can't go get your nails done or sit in your favorite restaurant and watch people go by, because the amenities of normal life have been taken away. But do people want the flexibility to come into the office 1 or 2 days a week, get together with their team, brainstorm, make plans, and then for that period of time where they would otherwise just be sitting at their desk by themselves, working on their computer, they can do that anywhere. They can do that from a favorite coffee shop. They can do that from home. And get a lot more flexibility. So I think we're on a one-way path here. At Slack, at least, we now have more than 20% of our employees started post-pandemic. And I myself just hired my first direct report, our new head of people, Nadia Rawlinson, and she lives in Chicago. She's the first exec that doesn't live in San Francisco, and she's not going to move.
Now, you hosted your first virtual user conference today. Sarah Cooper, who spoofs the president on TikTok, was your keynote, and I'm going to use that to ask you a question about politics, because the last few days have been quite a roller coaster, I think, for all of us. We've got a president with COVID, our country's political future in question, this big tech antitrust report coming down, so it's not like you as a business leader can ignore politics. How do you as a CEO operate in an uncertain environment and a potentially dysfunctional future?
It's been challenging. And I think take it in the context of the larger uncertainties, because obviously there still is a lot of uncertainty about the course of the pandemic, the economic recovery, and all that. And we can definitely know for sure that employees and humans generally don't do well with this degree of uncertainty. So I think emphasizing the things that are constant, emphasizing the things that we can rely on becomes even more important. And there's a nice phrase that leaders remind people what's important, and we're trying to do that inside the company as much as we can. So stepping back, thinking about customers, long-term strategy. Having said that, it is a constant distraction, and it continues to kind of feel like it spins further out of control. But I'm looking forward to, I hope, a period of increased normalcy, not too distant future.
Now, speaking of the House antitrust report, you've been in this business a really long time. Slack, I know, relies on some of these platforms to drive traffic, to drive customers. Do you think Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon, are they monopolies? Should they be broken up? Would that be better for future companies and innovation?
I'm going to have to do a little shrug of my shoulders on this one, not because I don't think it's an unimportant question, but I remember reading about Standard Oil and the kind of tactics that were used and the understanding that was built into the political system of what a monopoly means and why antitrust laws are there. And it's hard to square them exactly, but I think there's something to the belief that there's a disproportionate amount of market power concentrated into a small number of companies. Got to be really careful about the remedies there, though. I mean, I'm pro-regulation in the general sense. It's great that there's not as much lead paint around and the cars have seatbelts and things like that. But there can be real unintended consequences. And I guess I just hope that we think very deeply about any action that are taken on the legislative side.
So this is the world we've got, and we're all living in it. And I know that Slack, in many ways, is trying to make what we're all going through a better experience. You are prototyping new voice and video features to address some of the pain points that workers are experiencing. How will that change our relationship with Slack and change the role that Slack plays in so many workers' lives now?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we have 130,000 customers around the world, and they're literally all shapes and sizes. So at the big end, companies like Amazon and IBM, and at the small end, a lot of mom and pop businesses, a lot of restaurants, tax preparers, dental offices, and everything in between. One of the things that we've really heard over this period is also what we're experiencing inside the company, and that is we need to find ways to take processes and activities that today must be synchronous and make them asynchronous. And what I mean is not have the meeting be at 11:30 till 12 every Tuesday and 60 people show up. Can we take that same purpose and fulfill it in a different way? And this might sound nuts, I have no idea, but it's a lot like the experiences that people have in their consumer lives ported to enterprise. So a lot like Instagram stories, where people can give their updates on a schedule that suits them, and they can watch the ones from their colleagues at a schedule that suits them. That gives you two things. One is a lot more flexibility, which I think is very, very important, especially at this time. And the second one is it actually saves time. If it's a 15-minute daily stand-up meeting that you're getting rid of, you might have had 3 minutes of participation in that 15-minute period. But if it's a 30 or 60-minute long meeting, you might have only had 7 or 13 minutes or something like that. If we can help people reclaim some of the time and increase the degree of flexibility they have, I think that's a huge win. And then the other thing I would mention, we don't even have a name for it yet, but the always-on conversations. It's like a call, but it doesn't start and stop. It's always there, and you can enter and leave. The idea is to recreate some of the spontaneity and serendipity of office conversations, of people overhearing each other, of the ability, without formally scheduling a call or disrupting someone, to kind of be able to ask a question to someone a couple of desks over. And both of these we've been experimenting with internally and are hugely transformative. So we're excited to get those out to customers.